We also asked Dr. Kirita Parekh, former member in the Planning Commission for Power, to come onto the dais. I request Shri Rajiv Kumar Srivastava, Executive Director BHEL, to also come onto the dais. Shri K.S. Popley, Director Technical in IREDA, to also come onto the dais. Shri T.C. Arora, Senior Vice President, Aston Field Renewables, to be on the dais. Shri Hetal Mehta, Group Chairman Energy for the Southern Gujarat Chamber, on the dais. Shri Pranav Mehta, Director and CEO Global India Energy Solutions, to come onto the dais. And Shri Priyasan Murthy, Director Purnandi Associates, to come onto the dais. First of all, may I thank all the people who have come to this seminar, a first-timer in itself, looking at the theme, 40 gigawatt solar by 2022, and we will throw the whole platform up open over a period of time. Before that, may I request all our guests, I need to trouble them a little bit, to come on to the front for the ceremony and lighting of the lamp. May I request all the guests on the dais to please come over. I would also like to welcome all our guests on the dais with a small appreciation from our side. May I request the first appreciation to be given to Dr. Kirita S. Parekh. Please give a big hand, please encourage. May I have the next one for Shri Anil Razdan, and may I request Dr. Parekh to hand it over to him, please. May I now request the gift for the others. Next one for Shri Rajiv Kumar Srivastava, and my request Dr. Parekh to give it again. I'll trouble a little bit for another 2 minutes. My request memento for Shri K.S. Popley, Director Technical IREDA, and may I request Shri Anil Razdan to give this. And please, if Mr. Anil Razdan can continue, sir. For the others, may I request the next memento for Shri Pranav Mehta. Please give a big hand. A memento for Shri T.C. Arora. Memento for Shri Hetal Mehta, our friend from Gujarat. And memento for Shri Murthy. Thank you, all of you, once again for being part of this very important day. Thank you. And beginning this entire affair today, where we have 3 sessions. The first one is an inaugural, and we have eminent dignitaries who are connected with the solar industry. Dr. Parikh was there at the first N-Power Solar, where we had Sri Shyam Saran and all the people concerned with the solar mission. And Dr. Parikh has been a big encourager for the Inertia initiatives. Beginning the day, the whole thing is 40 gigawatt solar by 2022. So the first question would come, the mission is 20 gigawatt. Why we are discussing 40 gigawatt? An obvious question. As you would see, the experts today would deliberate whether this is feasible, whether this is ideal. But the whole idea behind it was very practical, I can tell you. The idea at our side, and when we researched, we found that one of the things that India will face a challenge in is becoming a manufacturing base. Any leadership that we want to achieve in the engineering and technology area needs an indigenous manufacturing base. And that cannot come with a capacity which is not substantial. So I think one of our friends, Arora Saab, told me that he may not agree with the idea scale, but I would really clarify that scale would mean both numbers, and definitely he wanted to say that, and I want to say that scale would be both numbers and size. But very clearly our direction and the thinking is looking ahead, looking at a certain capacity. We thought, can we look at around 6 to 7% of power generation in the national capacity or mix by the year 2022. So if we want to achieve, and I'm assuming an efficiency level which is higher, I think it may not reach there, but probably if we go to 40 gigawatt, we can at least come to 4 to 5% of the power generation capacity. Installed capacity on one side 40 gigawatt, but generation capacity wise the share will look at around 4 to 5%. So that's not asking for the moon, That's, I think, very reasonable and fair. So the pitch is very clear. While we are very, very happy that the National Solar Mission looks at 20 gigawatt, we said there is a chance for the industry to do. And we have seen this in other sectors. Like the wisdom that I got from Rajdhan Saab a couple of days back was interesting. While the challenge was taken for executing this 70 to 80,000 megawatt in this plan, we will see definitely 50 to 55,000 megawatt, if not more, definitely onto the grid. And I think the captive industry would, Rajdhan Saab can correct me, but would also give about 15 to 20,000 megawatt. 15 would be definitely there. So we can reach definitely the figure of 70,000 megawatt. So the whole picture can change, because if you look at what we achieved in the previous plans compared to what we may come up by the end of the plan or by the beginning of the next plan. There's a spillover period. If we consider and give that, I would say, tolerance, the engineering tolerance acceptable within a year or a half, I think we would be there. And it's still not a bad achievement compared to what we have been doing all these years. So I think if a positive side of the whole thing is seen, I think our pitch for solar is very similar. The 40 gigawatt pitch is very similar. But yes, we need to look at what price. Surely that is the challenge. The graphical challenge would be to look at, definitely the parity will be in question, whether at that point of time in 2022, the parity between coal, the thermal power, and solar would be achieved. I think it will be achieved much earlier. My gut feeling is 5 to 7 years from now, and maybe a little earlier if technology moves in the right direction, and if manufacturing supports it, and if project developers come up fast. And last but not the least, we need to look at whether we provide enough engineering manpower and expertise in the area of solar energy and solar power. Are there enough trained people? Are the engineering schools and colleges doing enough? Are we prepared and geared up? So I think it's not a question of only India. It's a question of how India would show the world the way in a different direction. While we have struggled all these years for a complete lack of electricity and other infrastructure also. It's not only the electricity sector, but the whole of the infrastructure sector also has struggled, for all these years. So picture could be very different, and solar can play a very different role. Now may I call over Sri Rajiv Kumar Srivastava to deliver his special address of BHEL, how it is enhancing indigenous capacity. We must also give a big hand. This seminar was possible because BHEL was the company which came forward to support this cause. Thank you, BHEL, once again.
Thank you, Professor Iyer. Very eminent members on the dais and distinguished friends and colleagues present here. I have a little presentation. Some very important points were brought out in the three addresses, in fact, by Bruce. And some of the important points which I did note down and which you might find repeating in my presentation as well are particularly on the question of grid parity, the coal reserves being finite and would not be able to meet all the power demands, and particularly on the collaboration between the academic institutions and the industry. Now, I'll give some perspectives on how we are looking at establishing a manufacturing base in the country, which is of some global scale. We feel photovoltaic and solar follows a little different economic logic than traditional products and systems. For example, television sets, if there's a market, it develops into a certain policy and it develops into eventually a macro picture, a macro contribution to the GDP of the country. Whereas solar, to my mind, the imperative starts from the macro, comes down to policy, and translates into demand. I mean, nobody would just go for solar because he wants to go for solar just as the way he'd like to go for a television set or a washing machine. There are two macro imperatives, and these have been dealt with by the earlier speakers also. To my mind, the two great imperatives which are driving solar worldwide are global warming and the energy deficit that developing economies like India are. Its outcome may have been debatable, but what did come out is the imperative that the energy-related CO2 emissions and the total greenhouse gas emission concentration, which, if nothing is done, the energy-related CO2 emission goes up to 40 gigaton in 2030. And the greenhouse gas concentration grows to 1,000 ppm in 2050. Now, this is definitely an unsustainable situation for the planet we live in and for our children, because the ambient temperature in that scenario goes up by 6 degrees centigrade. Now, we already often touch 50 in Delhi, and I was recently in US and it got really very hot there. So the alternative scenario which was discussed and which everybody recognizes, how it's to be done is a question of discussion and debate, but it has to be done, is accepted by everybody, to control the CO2 emission to a figure of 26.4 gigaton in 2030. Total greenhouse concentration must decline to 450 ppm in 2050, which would cause a maximum ambient temperature rise of 2 degrees centigrade, perhaps a little more manageable. There are, of course, sectoral targets for power generation CO2 intensity, the CO2 intensity for automobiles, building-related CO2 intensity, and industry-related. Now, how does this abatement come? If it has to drop from 1,000 ppm to 450 ppm, you will notice on the graph on the left that the two biggest contributors are this one, the end-use efficiency, and the second biggest contributor to this abatement process is renewable energy. It's here. The greatest amount of money flow in the period 2010 to 2020 and 2020 to 2030 is going to go into end efficiencies, roughly $2,000 billion worldwide, and renewables get about $500 billion in the period 2010 to 2020 and roughly $2,200 billion worldwide in the period 2020 to 2030. So these are the two biggest abatement measures, and therefore we as Indian industry and we as BHEL believe that it's an absolute necessity that renewables must be developed both as a national urgency and as a manufacturing base. The other imperative which I spoke of is about energy deficit. We all know that our country is deficit by about 15% of our power, and it impacts all the sectors of the economy: the agricultural economy, the remote areas, urban areas. Agriculture, there is a project that we are doing in Karnataka, and the rationale that they gave is that the solar energy will be fed to the farmers during the daytime. Now, you might be aware that farmers do not get energy at daytime and often have to depend on power at night time for the pump sets. So that is a contributor that our project would add to. The second is remote areas, islands, and we are doing a project in Lakshadweep. We are augmenting the capacity there. Urban areas, if you go just a few miles out of Delhi into Gurgaon and Sector 18 of Noida, you'll find the amount of energy that diesel is contributing to the economies of these little towns. I would therefore say that do we have grid parity as compared to diesel? Perhaps we already have. Then there is a indigenous shortage of coal and gas, which the two eminent speakers spoke of. And if you add the cost of handling imported coal and LNG terminals in the country, you will realize that there is an economic aspect to these costs as well. Then there is an economic cost of power deficit to the country itself. I may be right or wrong, but roughly 1 to 1.5% of our GDP growth is impacted by the shortage of power in the country. Now that is a huge economic cost that the country pays. If all these 5 or 6 factors are built into the contribution that solar is going to make, perhaps we might be closer to grid parity than we actually believe. Germany believes that they will be close to grid parity in 2 years' time, in the year 1213. And if the 16% degradation that they have planned in July in the feed-in tariff comes, perhaps grid parity would happen in the year 1112. So grid parity, to my mind, must be factored in with some of the other economic costs than the simple cost of generation of coal-based power. European Union definitely leads the way. The European Parliament and Council has agreed to climate energy measures on 17 December, and there is a mandatory target of 20% reduction in European Union greenhouse emission share of renewables in total energy consumption must come down by 20% by 2020, and energy efficiency must increase by 20%. So this is what they call the 2020-2020 imperative for European Union. And this is supported by legislation. In December 2009, member states released the forecast documents. And in December 2010, the national legislations have to be in place. EC can launch infringement proceedings in the European Court of Justice in case of this not happening in the 29 EU member states. So Europe is definitely driving and is the leader in solar. These are some of the feed-in tariff and policy initiatives in EU. Perhaps this is not readable from your distance, but what I'm trying to show here is that in all the European countries, particularly Germany, France, Spain, UK, the programs of solar are driven by feed-in tariff measures with a defined degradation rate. To my mind, what this gives is a certain certainty to the development of solar energy. Of course, there are tax benefits, there are financing schemes, and there are other benefits and some restrictions, like in certain countries like Spain, they have capped the program. USA, of course, the states have their own framework. California has a different framework from New York. There are grant programs, there are property tax incentives, there are feed-in tariffs, there are RPS standards, sales tax incentives, and tax credits for renewables. Build capacities of scale. Scale means, when I say scale, it's in the range of 250, 500 megawatt, and we definitely consider a technology station with us, the academic institutions, and research centers, key research, global research centers, the success of this assimilation as critical to our success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Srivastav Saab. We have quite a bit of eminent speakers, and after that, once the speakers are done, then we'll have a question-answer session with the speakers for sure, and with the audience. And I must thank the NIT Hamirpur, one of the A-grade, the IITs and the NITs are the A-grade institutions of the country. And we have a team from NIT Hamirpur, and I must really thank this team of students. We have attempted to interact and bring academia into our discussions. Thank you once again, the team. May I now request Shri K.S. Popley, Director Technical IREDA, to give us a complete perspective of the mission itself, because I think we need someone to throw light on the mission now, and he's the best authority to do that for us. Mr. Popley, please.
Respected Rajdhan Sahab, Professor Iyer, other dignitaries on the dais, dear friends, a lot has been said about renewable energy, carbon reduction. We have actually not accepted carbon emission reductions target. We could not have accepted them because of our developmental needs and growth in our energy sector. So what we came out was with National Action Plan on Climate Change in 2008. One of the missions, the most important mission in National Action Plan on Climate Change was Solar Mission, which was launched in January 2010. Since launch of the Solar Mission in January, a lot of activities have taken place. It was envisaged to develop the mission targets in 3 phases. Phase 1, I think everybody knows of the targets. Phase 1 was to develop 100 megawatt of grid connected power less than 33 kV voltage level, 1000 megawatt above 33 kV level, and 200 megawatt of off-grid level. The idea was to cover the whole gamut of solar energy development. there was an apprehension at that time that whether we will be able to meet this target by 2013, and therefore we had kept that we will shortlist the project developers on first come first serve basis. A very attractive tariff was announced by CERC, and that laid a very strong foundation for development of solar mission goals. In the second phase, we had put in 4,000 megawatt, and in the third phase 20,000 megawatt of grid connected, 2,000 megawatt of off grid connected, 20 million square meter of solar thermal collector area by 2022, and 20 million solar lighting systems by 2022 was the target. Now, the other goal was to create necessary policy and regulatory environment to attract industry and project developers to invest in research, domestic manufacturing, development of solar power generation. I must say, after launch of Solar Mission in January, almost 16 states, bearing 2 had already announced solar tariff. Total 16 states had announced levelized tariff for 25 years, which was eligibility criteria for projects to be selected under Solar Mission. And they had announced this within a period of 1 month. On 16 June, the guidelines were launched, and 15 July was the cutoff date, and we thought it will take some time. But on 15 July, when we opened our website, and it was on first come first serve basis, we had received 300 applications on the first day, and almost in first 10 minutes, more than 150 megawatt was covered. So that was the type of response, and states found it very difficult to contain the limited 20 megawatt allotted to each state. We had thought maybe we will limit it to 20 megawatt, but almost 16 states had to struggle and shortlist. So that was the response. That was maybe primarily because of very attractive tariff that was announced. But nevertheless, this has generated the type of excitement that was expected to be generated from Solar Mission. So in one way, they have achieved one goal. All the state electricity regulatory commission, state undertakings are sensitized to the need of development of solar. The second point I would like to mention is that going forward, the tariffs, not the tariffs, but renewable purchase obligation will be the driving force for development of solar in our country till we achieve grid parity. And initially the target is 0.25% of the total energy generated by each utility should be from solar, and they had targeted going forward up to 3% of renewable purchase obligation from solar by 2022. If we assume that, say, even 3 lakh megawatt will be the generation, total generation of power by 2020, then we will require at least, say, for achieving 3% solar, meeting 3% solar obligation, at least 12% installed capacity, and that comes to 36,000 megawatt. So the targeted figure is almost in line with, what will be our renewable purchase obligations. Then, with regard to reduction in costs, of course, this will start right from the phase 1, when NVVN would start asking for expression of interest, and then it will go for competitive bidding. So maybe in the first phase, people will be very careful, and reductions may not be possible, but maybe from next year onwards, when they go for the second bidding for solar PV, I expect substantial reduction prices. Of course, for solar thermal, the whole 500 megawatt will be bid in one go. So whatever be our learnings in the first phase and second phase, that will drive what we will achieve in third phase. Even if we achieve 40,000 megawatt of solar power, that will be equivalent to, say, 10,000 megawatt of thermal power. So it will not be a substitute for conventional power. And even if we harness the total renewable energy of 1 lakh megawatt besides solar, it will amount to say 25 to 30,000 megawatt. But nevertheless, that is very important for our country, and it also meets the distributed generation requirement. That is what all I have to say. Thank you.
We are very happy that Popli Saab has almost endorsed that this is a very practical position, and I would even further go for back and say Razan Saab says that there is a theoretical proposition of going forward. So it is definitely we need to now look ahead of what we said or what we have taken up in this seminar. Thank you once again for your insights, and we have a great opportunity. I mean to say, we have a discussion of PV versus thermal, but I think let both technologies go forward and let's see which catches up. Because in the long run, there is a nice paper written by Bloomberg, of all people, several years back, how PV would be taking predominant force as a driving force for the growth of the solar industry. So it's a very interesting paper that you can go through. It's available on the web. And they have basically supported from the point of view of deployment of technology. I'll give you a simple insight. 1,000 megawatt, I would say, thermal power plant would classically deploy or employ, and in perpetual manner, around 200 people. Means if you continue manufacturing 1,000 megawatt every year for the next 10 years, you'll probably employ 250 people. Whereas you do the same 1,000 megawatt perpetual, that means every year you make 1,000 megawatt of solar, you would end up deploying anywhere between, I'll tell you, if we are pessimistic, it will be around 25,000 people. If we are optimistic, you can go up to 1 or 2 lakh people. And if we scale up that, you can imagine what kind of deployment opportunities or employment opportunities that will come because of the kind of manufacturing alliance that it builds up. The only problem with India would be, that I visualize, is what we did with the other areas. Like, for example, in transformer manufacturing, India is one of the biggest countries. And according to our research, we are at number 3 position in terms of a global transformer manufacturing capability. But we still don't make what we call as CRGO, cold rolled grain oriented steel. We are net importers of steel. Whether we build a brand new transformer or we repair a transformer, we are net importers of CRGO. And there are only 6 manufacturers of CRGO in the world. Now, somebody would question, if we had a Steel Authority of India and a giant like that, and there are some very terrific manufacturers like Crompton Greaves who have taken over global companies, why we did not do it? The answer is a combination of political will, definitely a lack of vision. Unfortunately, I am forced to say that. And third is, I think we want everything to come tomorrow. There is no long-term view. While we talk of vision and mission, like Razan Saab said, we should not use these loosely. We must mean it and implement it. So there lies the fact. So I hope in solar, this wisdom is there with us of not achieving this. So we must know that we should not end up only becoming assembly lines for PV modules. Every other day I get a call, "Here sir, can you give me some guidance? We want to put up an assembly line." So I dissuade them. Always anybody makes a call to me, I say, "Bhai, iske liye mujhe nahi phone karo." Because we need to go beyond. So a very leading manufacturer in India, which includes Mozaber, today is a net importer of ingots in this country. So my fervent appeal to BHEL, so that's the hope that we have, is please make this happen. Get into making silicon ingots in this country. Then I think we have a great chance for PV. And then next step, the R&D. Then we have the NITs, the Hamirpurs and the Kurukshetras and the IITs, Powais and all of them involving and getting into the game. We will have a feed, definitely, because that can connect. So we must go to research and development. We have missed. We are becoming a soft economy, if you ask me. We want air-conditioned jobs. We want to get into those air-conditioned cabins and get out. Nobody wants to build hydropower. Very difficult now. Slowly there will be great challenges, right? Decentralized energy will definitely succeed because it needs expertise of the engineering kind, but there is a lot of opportunity of developing a clean and green situation with gas-based or even biofuel or biodiesel. It's possible. So that's a good opportunity, and an average decentralized station comes up anywhere less than a year nowadays. So, and it is really feasible. Then comes thermal power. I can assure you that nobody wants to work in a remote site, even in a thermal area, because I have gone to this Sasan. I don't know how they will import that turbine and that generators, and how they would move across, either from the MP side or from the side from Varanasi towards Singrauli. I just can't imagine what will happen when those machineries move. Because I reached 213 kilometers, Singrauli, on a night. It took me 7.5 hours. Mumbai-Pune Expressway, I hit in 2 hours, the same distance. So what are we talking about, of moving this? So when you look at all of this, solar is very big hope, because we don't face these problems in the area of solar. We will not face this kind of a large-scale movement. Definitely we will have to move components, supplies, etc. But it will be much better than looking at this kind of technology that we see. So I think, this discussion must further move forward on those lines. And may I now ask, before I call Pranavji, I think we would like to hear T.C. Arora Saab, because he has signed up some contracts in this country across Aston Field, and we want to know their views. And then we will have Pranav Mehta ji throwing the light on where we must go in the solar area. Thank you.
Professor Iyer, Shri Rajan Saab, Shri Vasav Saab, Popli Saab, Mr. Mehta, Shri Hital Mehta and Moti Saab, and distinguished guests. Yeah, we heard from Dr. Parekh and Mr. Rajdan about what we have been doing in the planning, we have an implementation, plus what India needs. But looking at certain aspects which have been already covered, I will just run through and not repeat that. We have 162 gigawatt installed capacity as of today, and 16 gigawatt is the renewable. If I go by 30-40% as the PLF for this renewable, in terms of million units, if I cover, it's coming out to 5 to 6%. But in terms of the energy balance report done by CA, by 2011 we would have around 876 billion units will required, and we have available by that time, as with the planning, 784, which leaves a shortage of 10.7%. That's on average, but if you go for peak shortage, it will be much more. So how do we cover that? It cannot be done with the conventional power, which takes a lot of gestation period, a lot of planning, and if you go by hydro, there are a lot of unforeseen surprises, but the solar is an answer. We worship every day in the morning. Why don't we use it? It's free. And there is no pollution from that. Of course, lighter side, for solar projects which we have taken, we had to take a pollution control board approval. Several states, as Mr. Popoli said, have come out with the tariffs in the last 1 month, and last date was 15 July. It was varying from 14.5 to 16.31, and CRC came out with 17.91 for PV, and solar was something 15 something. It is quite encouraging. The timelines given to commission to get this tariffs was also quite reasonable for PV as well as for solar thermal. But the policies which were supposed to be through by April took July, and now we yet have to continue with the same documentation to get the PPA and start the financial closure. If it is not done in time, we may not hit the time of 2012 also. 20,000 megawatt was announced, which created a lot of interest in the world market. Yes, people started looking into India seriously. They started planning. We also started planning for large scale, 20 megawatt, 30 megawatt, 50 megawatt, because experience, exposure of EPC developers, designers was there in Europe as well as in other states. But when it came out, 84 megawatt. Now 84 megawatt in comparison to 20,000 megawatt is not a good sign, but yes, it's still positive, and we are hopeful that at least one candle has been lighted. So we'll see how the things move further. India has 300 plus sunny days, has 5,000 trillion 5,000 trillion kilowatt hours per annum, which can be harnessed from the solar. What are we doing about it? The guidelines have come, they talk about one company to have 5 megawatt. I was talking to one of my friends before we started. He says, yes, we have a very big pot, clay pot, where we want to put the water. But we don't want to put the water with a spoon. We need glasses or mugs. If we want to put with a spoon, it will take a long time to reach there. Then you need a scale. Now scale is on two types, which I had a different opinion with him. The numbers of plants and the size of the plant. That is one. Second is this tariffs, the policy is attracting only a couple of states like Rajasthan or Gujarat. India is not Rajasthan and Gujarat. India is pan-India, and we need to develop wherever we can put the power plants, solar, take the solar rate, maybe less than 300 days, we should. The size can vary in Rajasthan and Gujarat, and the other places the size can be smaller, but we need to develop there also. So my topic is to talk about not only the scale of the plant, but also the number of plants. But to make it more viable, for those states where you cannot have 20, 30, 50 megawatt plants, you can only talk about 2, 3, 4, 5 megawatts, because there are limitations. We need to have a separate tariffs for that. If we can't have the separate tariffs because of the policies, then we need to give a different incentives for that. Otherwise, nobody will go there. I don't think the people sitting in Assam have made any crime that they can't use the sunlight, and Rajasthan people can. The government is same for everybody. So we need to really consider that. Coming to the point where Dr. Parekh and Mr. Rajan also touched on the fuel cost. Yes, it's a question of and a fight between finite and infinite. The infinite is available from time immemorial. We did not look up because it was too hot. But now we started looking at it. Finite is in the lap of the Mother Earth. But then we need to use judicially. We can't really do away with the conventional, but we need to use it judicially so that our next generations can continue to avail the benefit of cheaper power. We do understand we need to bring the power tariffs lower for solar, but how do we do it? Not with 5 megawatt or 2 megawatt. We need to create a hub of solar in India by creating large number of plants as well as large size of the plants. How do we do that? It's a public-private partnership. Both have to really work. The private and money making is no crime. They have to make money. The government has to develop. They have to do two ways: encourage as well as regulate. Now regulation is required, no doubt, otherwise there can be chaos. The encouragement. And the encouragement cannot be according to convenience. Encouragement has to be inclusive. It has to be given on all aspects. Before I really go on what we need from the government to do, what as a provider we have to do, I'll just touch a little base on the solar technology for the large scale. Yes, for the PV, we can go from 5 megawatt to 50 megawatt because in Europe people are putting about 30, 40, 50 megawatt nowadays. Earlier they were talking about 7, 8 megawatt, 10 megawatt, but that was done 10 years back, 8 years back. What they are doing now, we should copy that, not that what they did 10 years back. Similarly, on the solar thermal, people are putting a 375 megawatt solar power plant. Why we are limiting to 100 megawatt capacity? And that to multiple. People are now putting 10 megawatt power plant of solar thermal. Well, I shudder to think whether they are transporting the power or they are transporting the steam. On PV, there are different technologies, whether it could be cadmium telluride, could be amorphous silicon, could be any other. Since there are different technologies, the benchmarking is another question. The benchmarking of the prices of the technologies and the complete cost is really a question to the regulator. We have been interacting with the regulator and he is unable to get the benchmarking of the price, but that is how we achieve it. Until as we build the plants, we see the output, how it is related to the tariff and the output and the technology, we will not be able to do the proper benchmarking. It was possible in conventional because we could develop larger projects, we could benchmark, do the manufacturing here, we could benchmark, and the tariff was possible and go for competitive bidding. But how do you go for competitive bidding for this when you don't have benchmarking of the prices? So somebody can be very adventurous, somebody can be cautious. The cautious person will never get a job because adventurers will take. So that is where we have to also encourage and regulate. There's a government role has to be played that the adventurous bids should not be encouraged. Now working out, as I said earlier, how do we select a power plant, where it should be located. Like for government, it is very important that benchmarking should be done, the cost parity should be there, how to make it cost competitive. But then how to make it cost competitive is also the responsibility of the developer. Because if he makes cost competitive, he's also going to make money out of it. But he cannot make the same amount of money what he puts the investment in Rajasthan and what he puts in Odisha. So what the government has to do is, for Rajasthan projects, they have to think differently. For projects in Odisha, they will have to think differently. Because the investment is same. The works are same. The gestation period is same. So we need to really think on those lines. The soil conditions. Rajasthan soil is better. If you're putting in certain area which is very soft, the wind loads are high, the cost of the construction may go up. So that has to also be considered. So we can't have a generic tariff, we can't have a generic conditions. So it has to be. Like in coal-based power plant. When you want to put a coal-based power plant on a pit head, the tariffs will be different. When you want to put a plant in Punjab, you can't have the same tariff. So similarly, why not in this? So we need to find an innovative method to encourage installation of power plants in other places. Otherwise, all the people will put into Rajasthan, Gujarat, very difficult to put off. Without competitive bidding, you can't really decide who should get what. And then during sunlight hours, the power is fed into the grid, you don't have a grid planning, or the smart grids are not introduced immediately, then you have a problem with the kiosks. So we can only generate power when the sun is moving. But if the grid is not available, the power purchase is not ready to give deemed generation. Now what do we do in that case? So nobody is ready to understand that basic issue that we can't control the sun, but you can control the grid. The rationalization of tariff, which I have already touched, it should be on the basis of insulation level, should be on the basis of the technology which is being put by the developers, whether it's the PV or solar thermal, and the output related to the returns which you are promising as per your guidelines will go down. So not only the volume, but these things will also help us in bringing down the volume. I think the intent, what Dr. Parekh said, is to bring down the cost, not the volume. So I think we have to work in that fashion, and we as developers are very much interested in bringing down the cost, but show us the volume. Thank you very much.
Wonderful inputs, Arora Sahab, as usual. And we're coming to almost the end, and I would request, we have Mr. Murthy would be winding up, Hital Bhai would be coming all the way from Gujarat. He must put his views, what he felt. And may I ask Pranavji, which is probably the last insight into this whole session. And I would request Pranavji that if we can do it in 5 minutes, it will be great. 5 or 7 minutes, it will be great. Thank you.
My fellow speakers and friends, Professor Iyer has restricted me to only 40 gigawatts.
Interaction will be more.
That is the topic given to me.
More than 40 we can.
Therefore, he has made my job easier. In my opinion, it should be nothing less than 50 gigawatts. That too, I have written very hesitantly. And I am very happy that I have some support from Dr. Kirit Parikh and others. The following slides contain the logic for that. These all we know that which are the renewable sources, and solar energy I have put at the top. Then this also gives the potential as given in the Planning Commission document on integrated energy policy. Just mark there that the solar energy, it is indefinite. If you say megawatts per square kilometer, then It is not that we are some crazy people talking about either 40 gigawatts or 50 gigawatts. We have a great company in Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, not today, way back in April 2006, when there was a World Renewable Energy Conference very much here at Delhi. He had said that large-scale solar energy farms of hundreds of megawatt capacity in certain number could contribute to 55,000 megawatts. Then in here, this contains that how he had justified various sectors, including nuclear, hydro, and things like that, assuming that we will need 400,000 megawatts by 2030-32. Whereas, as you know, Planning Commission document and Dr. Kirit Parikh also just now mentioned that if we are to grow at 8%, it has to be somewhere around 800,000 megawatts or a million megawatts. So, when 400,000 is presuming 55,000 as the solar contribution, you can imagine that if it is double that, it will be under 10,000. Then for solar energy, he had said that how to go about. Solar energy in particular requires unique, massive applications. I am only quoting Dr. Kalam so far, where farmers need electricity exclusively. We all know that. We also need to embark on a program in solar energy systems and technologies for both large centralized application as well as small decentralized requirements concurrently for both in rural and urban areas. Then he has touched this very important aspect of what kind of research is required. Carbon nanotubes based PV cell expected to give efficiency of the order of 50% as against, though he has very optimistically written 25%, we all know that it is somewhere around 16% as commercially available now. So a big research mission is required, and I think this was touched by Mr. Razdan as well. So as I always say that we have, intellectuals like Dr. Kirit Parikh, Mr. Razdan backing this particular idea. Then rural household solar mission, that also by now we all know LED based nanocrystal lighting system through small solar PV power plants to 70 million rural households using kerosene presently. How 40 gigawatts is achievable? We must first understand the change in the scenario for solar energy in the last 3-4 years, just 3-4 years, and the scenario emerging for the next 10 to 12 years. Then only we will be able to arrive at some proper number. Changes with respect to the main parameters. So let us say project cost, what are the changes? Solar cell efficiency, what are the changes? Land requirement, what are the changes? And government priority, what are the changes? The project cost estimated 4 years ago at the time of publication of the Integrated Energy Policy document by Planning Commission was being touted somewhere around rupees 21 crores per megawatt. As we all know, the project cost presently being quoted for solar PV projects is by CERC estimates rupees 15 to 16 crores per megawatt, whereas we all know that it is less than 15 crores. Let CERC give encouragement for this industry. Much lesser numbers are also being talked about. So I am not getting into that dispute. That when we have the panel discussion, maybe we can discuss that. Then solar cell efficiencies have also considerably improved. Presently, almost all projects are being planned on 15 to 16% solar cell efficiencies. Whereas I know, because I am connected with space applications, solar cells used for space applications are commercially available today. If you want, you can order 36% efficiency. It is a well-known fact that NREL has already achieved 40% efficiency. Dr. Abdul Kalam has already shown a way how to go for 50% by way of research. So when I talk of next 5-10 years, that may be achievable. Land requirement was also being slated at that time, stated as 7 to 8 acres per megawatt 4 years ago. The same is now being estimated at 5 to 6 acres per megawatt. Because when people have to shell out money, they come out with the accurate numbers. Then government priority. In 2006, there was hardly any sensitivity or priority for the government for solar energy. In February 2008, the first 50 megawatt solar energy scheme was announced by the Government of India. This triggered an incentive war amongst various states for solar energy. West Bengal, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Punjab, Karnataka all came out with special policies. In November 2009, as we all know, Government of India announced the 20 gigawatt Jawaharlal Nehru mission. Some state regulators came out with solar specific RPOs, and as Mr. Popley mentioned, 16 states have now come out with these kind of specific tariff orders. Now summarizing the changes, this is where this answer to the cost question is here. Project cost in rupees crore per megawatt is now, instead of 16, it is going to 12 in the days to come, and even less. Solar cell efficiency is going from 16 to 40. There is a dramatic improvement in solar cell efficiency. The only thing is that we have to see that it is commercially made available, like in case of mobile telephones. Once the volume increases, I am sure that we will be able to achieve some of these things, and also R&D. Then land requirement also, as we have said, has gone down from 8 to 5, and government priority also, which was nil, has gone to high. So the importance of the role of the government. So I always believe dreams come true. We should have a much higher dream than 40 gigawatts. So Professor Iyer will, I am sure, next time write 100 gigawatts.
So I think we are all full of, I would say, steam over here as far as solar is concerned. So I'm happy to see that it is moving beyond what we tried to shape up, and this is exciting for us also. May I now request Murthy Saab to give a 3-minute view, and Hetal to wind up, so that we can have an interaction with this panel, with this excellent inaugural session.
Distinguished guests on the dais and the guests, we have wonderful insight into the complete solar potential which is available in the country. From Dr. Kirti Parakh we had, Mr. Anil Razdan has given very detailed this one. If you see, basically very few things are coming out from the whole system. What exactly is needed for this? One is the cost competitiveness, which is very vital for any type of projects to come up in India. And second is technology. And when we call it technology today for solar, the technology still has to get into the matured stage. The technology is fresh or raw, whatever we call it. Whereas the thermal, nuclear or hydro, you call these mature technologies today. So the price levels are much more stabilized, and you know what is going to cost per megawatt this much, or it's going to come down based on the conditions. So the technology for solar has to still to mature. That's what, in my opinion, needs the one of the major things. And of course, Arosa was pointing out there is no T&D network for carrying out the solar when you are developing a huge this one. This brings to a question: why not solar be treated as more as a decentralized energy, and why not it be proposed for the rural infrastructure purposes? This could be a basic decentralized energy where a basic policy decision is required by the government of India or state governments, so that this can be a decentralized energy which can feed to the interior places where a T&D network cannot go. You can provide there the power to the people, to the farmers, whichever is working it up. I think this is one issue where a lot of policy decisions are needed. I think government can think in this direction for a basic change in the policy, treat it as a decentralized energy and put it into the rural infrastructure development in a big way. Well, another thing, if you see, a lot of us go to Gurgaon, we see big tall buildings with a lot of glass and everything. Why not these buildings be made mandatory to be greenhouses with using all solar power systems? This comes under Urban Ministry. That means a Ministry of Urban Development and the Power Ministry should make a policy decision that any buildings coming up in certain area with so much capacity, the solar energy must be a must for those things. Again, this is possible to develop only through a legislation. It cannot happen by having a simple policy statement. It needs a legislation. Basically, maybe urban legislation needed for this particular part of it. Then another basic problem we are facing is the manpower. Yes, the manpower problem is not only in solar sector, it's today in power sector. Today the power is going up big way, and we have real manpower shortages in the power sector. As Mr. Anil Hasdan has said, truly that any power experienced person is very well taken care of today, even after he comes out of his job or retired from the business. So this is where the manpower requirement needs to be a lot of interaction between industry and the institutes. I think one of the reasons why the institutes are not exactly fully geared up to what is happening in the industry, what is the technologies coming up. So the education system and the industry needs to have a lot of interactions, and these interactions only can allow the trained manpower to come out of the institutions, which can meet the changing scenario of the Indian economy and Indian power sector. This is one area where even the institutes have to think themselves inside and how they are going to interact with the industry, how they are going to interact with the utilities, and what are the changes they need to do in the curriculum to meet the demands of the industry. This needs to be looked after by the institutes themselves also, because many of the guys we know today, in fact, it's a very funny thing I heard in one of the interviews. One is an electrical engineer. When he came out, he was asked an interview question: what is the highest voltage level of transmission in India? And anybody can guess what his answer was? He says it's 132 kV. He has seen a 132 kV line. This is a bit shocking, and that guy is secured very high percentage of the marks. So that means there is a big gap between the institutes and the industry and what is happening in the country today. I think this needs a change. For this, luckily we have some people from the institutes today present here. It needs a lot of interaction with the industry and the utilities for people to understand. And a lot of the electrical engineer, if he is there, see, they have big distribution network in their own institutes, or these guys have to be taken and shown what exactly it is. At least they should be taught these fundamentals. So I feel this is one of the basic reason I thought we should share, and it's very highly pointed out. Yes, we are going to have manpower shortage, and this only training and understanding with the institutes only will improve this part of it. And that's my point of view. Thanks a lot.
Thanks once again, Murthy Saab, for giving your insights on this particular inaugural session. I must also thank two people, who are in the audience right now, and I think they would take over the dais after this. One is Mr. J.K. Mehta, my very good friend from the World Energy Council, and Inertia is extremely happy to be associated with WC activities, as well as we are a friendly organization. We would keep supporting the World Energy Council in whatever they do. And we are tied up as the official publication. For whatever they do, we cover up, and he has to just tell us what they want to say. So we are happy that WC has a setup in India now through them. And another friend who walked in and is right at the end, I want to thank him because I was associated with this excellent institute as a visiting faculty. I have been a visiting professor. I was the youngest visiting professor in the country for international business and international marketing long time back, but now I got an opportunity to train in energy, and that is Symbiosis Institute of International Business. We have Dr. Prakash Rao right behind, was taken time off to be with us on this day, and I have trained their first batch on renewable energy. I believe I'll get more opportunities to interact with their people. They have a set of about 30 odd people who are coming out, and that's the first ever, I would say, initiative in any area in engineering, management and technology for renewable energy based master's program. Am I right, sir? Right. Thank you once again, both of you. May I ask Hetal Bhai to wind up, and we will have a 15 minutes question answer session and immediately move for our second session of tea before we can return to the next session, which is on developing solar power.
Thank you, Professor Iyer. Friends, non-stop debate, more than 2 hours on solar, on sun, sitting in the air-conditioned hall. Good. We can see this is second N-Power Solar, 2010. But I remember the first solar, N-Power Solar, where Professor Iyer was talking, why we are talking about the solar lightings and solar water heaters, why can't we think about the solar grids, solar power in megawatts? And very next year, he is coming here with the gigawatts, not with the megawatts. So what Mr. Pranav has told might be true. He might be talking third year, more than 100 gigawatts. Many learned speaker have thrown the lights, and Mr. Murthy has summarized it very nicely, what they told, what we have come up with this. Friends, one thing is very clear, we have to think on solar, and the movement is already started by Professor Iyer and many learned people here. As we all know, necessity is the mother of invention. We have to invent. The constraint is cost, but very soon we'll come up with the cost constraint also with the better technology. So what I suggest, we should not, what I mean, do not go the way where life takes us, but take the life where we want to go. So that's what we have to plan our future. And at this juncture, I thank all the gentlemen on the dais and off the dais for make this session very interesting, and still you will make the interactive session more lively. Thank you very much.
May I have the mics, please, for the audience, and any questions that the audience wants to raise right now?
Germany getting close to grid parity, but Germany is getting close to grid parity at solar tariff level of about 25 euro cents. So please, it's not that their tariffs are lower than ours, and the technologies are pretty much similar to what are being developed in this country. In fact, which are already in stages of manufacturing in this country, which is multicrystalline, monocrystalline, thin films, and various kinds of other solar thermal technologies. So if they are getting close to grid parity, depending on the region in which you are located, Germany has tariffs of 20 to 25 euro cents. So I think the grid parity that we are looking for does not factor in a lot of these liquid fill kind of things, the cost of various infrastructures, and all the costs don't really come in. If you build in those costs, we are not as far away from grid parity as probably we think we are.
Things actually, when you're talking of solar plant, one of the main cost is panels. And what we have seen in thermal, like when we look at equipment from coming from outside India, like that has put a pressure on like local manufacturers. Like the prices have really come down, the timelines, the delivery schedules have improved.
Yes.
So do you think it makes sense to have this market open for imports also for some time?
I'll tell you, if you really believe that imported equipment, especially modules, is cheaper overseas, let me tell you this. The Indian PV market has not been a very big market. The manufacturing capacity in the country presently really addresses the global market, and our panels are very much in demand overseas. So it's really the other way around. We are competitive outside. We are definitely competitive in-house. It's not a case that you would need to at any stage import modules and cells just to get over the competitiveness issue. We are competitive in this country, we are competitive globally. If you're looking for issues around China, well, the kind of irrational costing and pricing, I'm not discussing that. but yes, across Europe, United States, in fact, today the manufacturing capacity for modules and cells in the country is roughly about 500 megawatt. Demand, as you know, is not even 50 megawatt. Where does the 450 megawatt go? It goes to Europe. So we are competitive, sir. Please be under no doubt.
Maybe this is not the right forum. But we should, like you said, China, we are not going to discuss that. But we should be open to, if it's manufacturing base outside, it could be anywhere in the world. If they can supply cheaper technology.
They do not have any better technology or cheaper technology. What they are capable of doing is some irrational pricing of the same mundane technology. That is, that is.
I am S.K. Sukla.
Any other members would like to express their views on this subject? Right, thank you. Mr. Shukla, go ahead.
Mr. Mehta, you said about solar cell efficiency to the tune of 40%. Now, that is the reality which is going to come. What is the latest in this respect available with BHEL or with Tata Power or with so many other manufacturers, the prevailing position? And what could be further forecast in this direction, because that is the key issue. So far we are talking about the cost implication in the field of solar power development. So can you kindly brief?
Yeah. The first thing is that the present manufacturers, mainly Moser Bayer and Tata, BP Solar, the efficiencies available are, as I had noted, is of the order of 16% only. That is how the plan, all the solar plants so far are being planned. Not to talk of thin film, where, as you know, it will be lower. At the same time, this 40% is very much achieved by the NREL, as I said, no, at Colorado. So Boeing is taking a lot of interest in that. So in other words, 40% has been achieved in laboratory. On the other hand, on commercial side, I said 36% efficiency is available for space solar power, which are the space hardened cells. Only thing is the cost of that 36% is higher. So what we need to do is get some of those 36% cells, and I can tell you the name of the supplier, major supplier for space is Sharp of Japan. So we should import, study, and also a big R&D mission as to which even Dr. Kalam has emphasized, and Mr. Razdan also said. And I think that as important as the solar mission should be the R&D mission, which we have to really organize, maybe by a consortium of some leading academic institutions. Presently, you know, the nodal agency is IIT Bombay for solar energy. So that task has to be given to them, that in a given time frame, you have to improve the efficiency to this level. Because if elsewhere people are able to do it, why can't we do it?
Well, good evening. My name is Abhishek and I'm from Boyd. I have a question for any of the manufacturer like BHEL. Do you have any plans for a 1 kilowatt compact photovoltaic or a combo system package in future? Because in my opinion, because I have also worked for a photovoltaic industry in 2002, and I believe in 1 kilowatt system doesn't take much of a space also in terms of photovoltaic sale. And we have millions and millions of homes in India, and if we give a 1 kilowatt mandatory system to these homes, I think 40 gigawatt is not a problem in that case.
Your suggestion is it's a extremely good suggestion, and I believe there are certain companies who are wanting to do this. Specifically on BHEL, we are not venturing into this exactly because our distribution network is quite limited, and therefore we are concentrating only on the larger power plants. These small distributed systems are not in BHEL's portfolio of products and systems, but definitely it's covered by some of the other companies, and one of which I know who's working on this is REIL in Jaipur.
Pranav, you would like to say?
Sir, on this employment, we have one very knowledgeable person present here who has operated power plants, and I would request my friend Himadri Banerjee, who was my colleague in Tata Steel. No, you must share your experience of this employment business, because you have operated plants in Tata, you have applied in Ahmedabad Electricity, you have in Reliance. You must share.
Let me just try to support what Professor Iyer is saying. I think during the question and answer session, point got missed what he wanted to say, and he also forgot what he had said. What he said was that if you have solar PV
solar PV as the main, generating tool for us in the future, we would be able to employ much more people than if you go through the through the normal fossil-fired thermal routes. I fully agree with him, because as you see, in a thermal, you can go up to one plant of 4,000 megawatts. Today, one unit of 1,500 megawatts are also, are coming up. So there, the total manpower which is going to be employed is very, very less. In fact, today we are talking of 0.2 per megawatt in thermal power plants. Whereas in solar PV, when you look at, you're going to have two routes. One is the grid connected and, large power plants. But I think what Professor I had in mind was the kind of California or that kind of, the Germany, the kind of, the rooftop solars and all that with FITs for the individual investors, and each and every individual is earning money out of, selling power to the grid. If that is going to be the route, he is correct. Per megawatt, we will need about more than 25,000 people, he said, but that was a figure. But I would think somewhere around 10,000 people would be all right. So against 0.2, we are talking of nearly 10,000. You understand? This I wanted to put in perspective, because one of the gentlemen asked this question. I think he talked about whether it be commercially viable. Actually, he was trying to put a googly to you.
That's what I thought you said. That I think we must not overemploy.
Yes.
For a caution.
You're right.
At the time. That it's just.
I think you're right. That we have much more potential for generating employment, especially for a country like India, if you go for a solar PV route. Now, just give me one, since I've got an opportunity, let me just ask one question to the panel. We are all talking of, a price of somewhere around, 16.9 or somewhere around 17. And whereas in thermal, we are talking of 15.3. What is the general opinion of the House? Is it doable? By PV it is doable, I think so, I agree. But in thermal, is it doable? That's my question, because I have been struggling with this, solar thermal. I'm talking of CPV, concentrated solar. That's my question. If somebody can throw some light on that. Thank you.
Mr. Bopta, would you like to? You're in touch with OP. And then Mr. Arora, I'd request them.
Sir, I think what CERC tariff, what they have given is, they have considered a cost of 17 crores for PV, which would now be, in my opinion, it will come down to around 14 crores per megawatt, and the tariff is likely to come down. For solar thermal also, for concentrated solar also, they had probably taken a much lower figure, and there was a case of slight increase in the tariff, but maybe now with competitive bidding going on, I
have made a full costing of the solar thermal power plant, pricing of how 100 megawatts for one of the top utilities in this country, and I'm shaking my head. You are right at this figure. I would like to know from where this figure has come. I'll be very, I'll be very glad to
because
have this figure, but it's not coming.
I will not be able to speak on behalf of CERC, but what I know is CERC had based it on the figures they got from the industry, and maybe there is a reason for correction.
You have developed some solar thermal plants.
No, we haven't, but I can give you, on both the answers, I'll give you on PV. See, when you talk about PV, it is viable. It's viable in certain areas of the country.
Yeah.
It's not viable.
Rajasthan and Gujarat.
Yes, it's not viable all of the country.
We are talking of Rajasthan and Gujarat.
When you talk about the solar thermal,
Yeah.
the tariffs have been considered with certain assumptions. And the basic assumption, which is the insulation level, or DNI, that itself is a question mark, because they don't have the data on that. If you really want to work with that kind of tariff, you have to hit a DNI level of 5.8 plus. Otherwise, you can't. So that's the question. The other assumptions can be debated, but this cannot be. If you don't have a DNI which can give you the output based on that, the other things you can bring down, but
No, but the capital cost, I'm not talking about the tariff, I'll come to the tariff later. The capital cost of the plant, they have given as 15 something, isn't it? Chandan, 15.3 crores per megawatt.
Per megawatt, that's right.
Is it possible?
See, I'm coming to the same thing. So if you talk about the capital cost by 15.3,
Yes.
they covered with the different technologies and generic, made general. So parabolic trough will have a different efficiencies, FSR will have different, dish will have a different, and tower will have different. And the capacities are different.
So does it mean that there's going to be one particular technology that you will be hitting 15.3?
Possibly a parabolic trough, but then the size.
Then it restricts the entire,
Because that is the, they have taken all this data from outside and whichever is more proven.
I work mostly in Spain these days. It is not possible to get these figures in Spain.
And I think we need to be more impatient if we want to achieve this thing. Thank you.
So there is a very excellent session at the end of it before we move to the dinner and cocktail, and that will be the finance session. So we have three. The first session is over, the developer session will be the next, and the third one is finance.